Welcome back. Another episode of the Easy Button Real Estate Podcast with myself, Cole Ruud-Johnson, and Mr. Tucker Merrihew. As you guys know, Tucker is living in beautiful Naples, and I am in beautiful San Diego now. So we both are former prisoners of war from Seattle and Portland. I think by birth for you, Tucker, right? You were born there? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm an Oregonian by birth. That's for sure.
Yeah, I was Seattle by birth and fled during the great COVID prison break. So, I was looking at this. I saw this chart like, summarizing 2025, and per 10,000 residents, how many new people each state added, or how many people left. And I was pretty surprised. Guess what was number one on terms of new residents per 10,000 current residents.
So like the biggest influx of
Biggest influx.
population.
Yep.
Texas, maybe?
It was South Carolina.
Oh, that makes sense too. Charleston is, got way too many people for the size of the city now, but it's an awesome place. And so I think a lot of people move there or kind of surrounding areas. But that makes sense. It's a cool state, other than the fact that, Lindsey Graham
South
represents them.
Carolina, Boise, Texas, and Florida were the top four and then Connecticut was up there too for new people.
Well, they're running away from the New York taxes. That's probably what's going on there.
That's what's happening. And then obviously there's a lot of, everywhere else was kind of people. South Dakota actually had a lot of new people too, but there was a lot of people fleeing, obviously, California, Seattle, Oregon. But those weren't even the top three. The biggest people was like people moving out of Hawaii and people moving out of Alaska were massive. Surprising enough. Yeah, I mean, it was South Carolina surprised me. We have a few clients that are doing a lot of deals in South Carolina, even though they have the wholesaling law to kind of have to work around and be a little more creative with. But that was fascinating. But besides that, what in the past week since we've been on the mic, what's going on down there? Did you get your stuff out of the Strait of Hormuz? I'm sure everyone was eager to hear how you're fighting the war against Iran right now.
I'm wishing that I was on the insider trading plan that apparently is going down. But no, we haven't got our stuff out of the Strait of Hormuz. Fortunately, we don't need it quite yet, but we have progressed. We got, I was actually just on the job site before I came back here to the office to record with you. And we got all of our footings ready to be poured along with our slabs. So here in Florida, you don't have like crawl space raised foundations. You basically build on slab, and then you put, just imagine you're putting your foundation essentially in the ground. So it's like giant footings, and then you pour the slab that kind of, comes to the top of that. And then you build giant block walls on top of that. And so we're pouring slab and footings Monday. We got all our underground plumbing in. So you got to pull your plumbing in, of course, before you pour your slab because it runs under the slab. And so we're moving and grooving. The market has some bright spots, I guess. It's not like universally hot because I monitor every day all the different, parts of town that either we'd want to, build houses in, or that we own houses in. And, a couple of them, like the house that you guys stayed in Naples Park, it was pretty dead for a long time, and it's a pretty dense neighborhood. So there was a lot of housing on the market. And it started to pick up a fair bit. There was actually the house that was 2 over from the one that you guys always stay in when you come down for our quarterly retreats. That was had like yellow shutters, and it was a 1 level, and we renovated it. We didn't build new. We sold it a couple of years ago, and the guy that we sold it to, nice guy, he just turned around and put it on the market, and I was like, it's not a great time to be selling, a house. But he actually put it on the market. It went pending in 4 days for $50,000 more than we sold it to him for. So I take that as a good sign. It's the first like forward progress on pricing I've seen in a while on a resale from 2 years ago to now. But it also says that I guess that we put together a pretty good product if it's sold in 4 days at what I consider to be a pretty aggressive price for today's market. So
Yeah, your product
interesting
does
times.
everyone down there does look very Florida. I think you did a good job of kind of because there's integrating in. There's a lot of developers here that they build, Scottsdale homes in San Diego, and it just doesn't fit in exactly how it should into kind of the landscape and what else has been built. So and they sit, well, like I was talking about that developer on a previous show that built like 8 of like these, the Scottsdale style ramblers that are like 6,000, 7,000 square feet on a big lot, and they just have sat there for almost 2 years. And so I think that's probably one of the hardest things about that move that you did was trying to figure out, because I know you were a Street of Dreams builder in Portland, and you kind of obviously figured out that market of the different buyer psychology in Florida, like what they're looking for and the product you have to build.
Yeah, it's different. It's way different. I mean, in every part of the country, like you mentioned, the California style is, not completely aligned with your whatever Scottsdale style that guy showed up and built with. It could be lot related to and other things. But here, there's a lot of really cool architecture and houses in Florida, but Southwest Florida has been pretty blah in terms of like the design and it's just you're basically building a block bomb shelter, and so people have gotten really lazy over the last, few decades in terms of when they build new here because and I didn't get this thought process when I moved down here. And we're not doing this just for the record, but I understand why like mediocre builders have had so much success here. Because at first I was like, they build this really boring product that is just like it's okay, But what they said is they don't have to build any, or they haven't had to build a better product because you get these kind of middle age Americans coming down from, kind of middle of the country, right? Ohio, Michigan, that type of area. And they've just sold, a company or had a, retired or got a windfall or whatever. And they come down here and, a lot of that housing in kind of middle America is kind of boring and dated too because there's not a whole lot of high end markets to be able to kind of make things look really really cool. So they come down here and they're almost like comfortable seeing this like boring vanilla new house, and they're like, I don't have to do any work. Great, I'll take it. And so that has caused this market for decades, really, to just be like kind of ho hum design wise. So we're obviously, trying to do what we did back in the Northwest, which is try and design homes that are really, really cool that stand out from other homes that are on the market, which is why we did well there. And we've made that transition now. But it's definitely something you have to think about. And we spend a lot of time designing our homes, so we're kind of integrating a lot of the style from like the East Coast of Florida and some of the classic Keys type style. And we're kind of fusing those together for the home that we're building here now. So I think it'll be a hit, but it's definitely something you got to think about when you're building, especially when you're building, something other than, bread and butter. We'll call it more affordable housing where people just want something new and clean and at a reasonable price.
Uh, well, one of the things I wanted to cover on today's show that one selfishly also think would be very beneficial for the audience is, as we talked about in previous shows, I've started to kind of scale back up Hello Pad, my real estate company, in San Diego and Seattle, and hired a couple of sales guys, and it's going well. The reason I did it wasn't to collect assignment fees, is because for a long time, um, new construction has fascinated me. I have a buddy, Abram, who I started wholesaling with. That's 20. He's my age, turning 28, and he's building 15-ish homes over the past 2 years. He's built 15 homes each year in the Nashville area, and obviously different product, cheaper product. You can build quicker than you can in Seattle or San Diego there. And he's not, he's making 200-300 grand a deal, and obviously in different markets you can make 500, 600, 700 or more. But it's fascinated me because and he'll admit it. He's not any, smarter or, technologically savvy. I mean, in fact, we worked on a lot. He was a client of ours on lead gen side for a while. But someone like me who has that background, who knows how to source deals, how would you approach doing your first kind of deal that way? In terms of what would you be targeting? Would you be partnering with a GC and just taking, a percentage of it? How would you? And I think it's very valuable because a lot of people I know in our community are in the middle of that jump. I just got off with one of our clients, Carl, who's he just bought a development side, actively in that pivot. And I'm not trying to do volume. I think it's something long term that I want to have in my Rolodex, because in San Diego, if I can do even one of those a year in certain parts down here with the relationships and funding that I have access to. Um, so yeah, well, what in a roundabout way, what would your advice be to someone like me that was looking to do that?
I think I would try and partner with a actual builder before a GC, right? Because a GC is just licensed to
Yeah.
manage subcontractors essentially, which doesn't mean that they don't understand how to like build a home from beginning to end, but it definitely doesn't mean that they understand how to create a marketable home and knows what a good plan set looks like in terms of marketability, functionality, usability, desirability. Um, it doesn't mean any of those things. And then on a design side, they who knows, right? Where their kind of level of understanding of that is, especially for the market that they're in, and potentially the price point of the house. Now, if you partner with a builder, then they have a pre-existing, Rolodex or just process that they go through when they, buy a lot and they're going to spec a home on it. And that's really where you're going to learn the stuff that needs to be known the most. Because the construction stuff, you can always hire construction managers to kind of help you along the way manage construction and subcontractors and things like that. Or eventually maybe you can find a GC that'll just build the houses for you. But if you don't have the baseline understanding of how builders look at lots, how they look at floor plans at whatever price point and market you're working in, how they look at design, how important all that stuff is, that's really like the nuances to like what makes a builder okay to be great. And so that's where I would start. I don't know that relationship would go forever, especially as a partnership, because builders, they'll just buy lots off you. They don't need you to partner with them for the
Mhm.
whole thing. But if the lot's good enough and it's in a good enough area, and they like the deal or whatever the partnership is, if obviously if they got to go get the debt and they're taking on the responsibility of paying that debt and making sure the construction gets done, maybe your partnership percentage is less, but at least you get to see under the hood and see how they operate and see their thought process on underwriting the deal, how they're going to price it, what the design will be, what are the comparables we're looking at, how are they trying to be better, that kind of stuff that you can't rely on just a normal GC to even think like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Um, those are the nuances that make people successful in building. Because otherwise, most GCs look at it as just everything's equal, right? A 3-bedroom, 2-bath is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, with whatever amount of square footage and
Yeah, it's
basic
different.
compliant package and whatever. But that's a good starting point, because there's just a lot to know, and it's hard to it takes time to kind of absorb it all, but it takes time to build a house too. So if you partner with somebody that knows all those things, it gives you adequate time to kind of absorb as much as you can along the way. So that would probably be my suggestion. And also, probably a little bit higher price point area, because then the margin, if it's a great lot or tear down in a great area, they'll be much more, they'll have a lot more desire to partner with you because it's a great product for them. They can then get into that neighborhood, maybe a little more, or build their brand a little bit more there, or it's just potentially a great standalone product in a great neighborhood at a high price point or a higher price point. So that's kind
And
of how I do it.
is that relationship typically, someone like me brings the deal and then they're bringing financing and kind of expertise in the build? And is that just like a 50-50 JV, or how do you think that would be structured to do it the right way?
I don't know. I think 50, you'd be hard pressed to get that out of anybody, but you might get 25. Um, and who knows? I mean, everything's open to negotiation. I don't know what the margin is. I don't know how much debt needs to be taken. I don't know if you as the partner are, willing to go get debt too, or, whatever, or have capital to be able to contribute to the deal.
Of
So there's
course.
a lot of factors there that could change kind of that split, you know, pendulum, we'll call it. So I don't know, nothing's set in stone. It's kind of wild, wild westy, right? Like it's just how good of a relationship do you have? How good is the project? What are you bringing other than just the deal? And what are they providing? In terms of construction management expertise and debt or capital to take the deal from raw lot to finished product.
And when it comes to like geographic area, because in San Diego down here, you have the Coastal Commission. And when you get close, when you're in any city that's along the coastline, the Coastal Commission's brutal. And, it takes a lot of developers 2-3 years from purchase to permitting to dealing with the Coastal Commission to, building the product to selling out. Would you be avoiding those areas and going, because there are some areas inland that are still higher price points. Like I live in one of them right now, Poway, where you can still find a lot for, 1.1, 1.2, or a house for 1.5, 1.6 that, will sell for 3.5, 4, 4.5. Are Are you kind of just like go anywhere? And, I guess also the rule of thumb wise, because, a lot of people that teach development to the masses, there's a lot of guys that sell courses on it. Like they run big communities and they just teach development and spec com building. And their whole thing is like, yeah, no matter where you are, if you get a lot for 20% of resale value, you're good. Is that a rule of thumb that you think is applicable, or like also where would you focus in, market like this? Because obviously I would do it where I was, based out of most likely, instead of trying to do it in Seattle. Although I could, because I have relationships out there that I could be a, more of a passive partner in those. That's not what I'm looking for. I wanna actually learn it.
First of all, 20% rule is like, that'd be like us, a unicorn deal for us on the
Of
flipping
course.
side, right? Like, so I can understand why they'd say that. But to kind of layer on the other parts of your question, if you got to deal with the Coastal Commission, which extends your timeline by 2 to 3 years, well, that's dead money for 2 to 3 years. So, your cost of acquiring and holding, you have to account not only for the debt service or the opportunity cost on that money, but also the headache and the pain in the ass factor and all that. So I personally, I mean, I don't know. I've never gone through that process there, but I'm guessing that it's painful, and everybody that knows how to get through it still hates it,
Mhm.
with a passion. So I would probably find the areas that are nicest that butt up closest to where that kind of line is. And I'm sure you can probably see that line if you go, like, search some online resources or whatnot. It shows you exactly where their jurisdiction is in terms of reviewing and improving plans and giving their own red lines or whatever it is. I'd probably butt up as close to that as I could in areas that are nicer, that have higher price point potential. And I'd probably stick to those because you're also gonna have a much bigger market of builders that would potentially partner with you because, I'm sure there's a lot of guys that avoid that like the plague because they're just like, "I don't wanna deal with it. I don't wanna get caught up, in a 2, 3 year, just getting my plans approved extravaganza with all this capital deployed and then have that hamstring my business on the other end and not be able to add, other projects that we can get through in a third of that time," right? So, I that's a it's a dangerous game when you get caught. I've been caught in a few projects over the years where we had one lot that we bought. We ended up selling it and we made good money in the end, but it was a 5-year project because
Mhm.
it was in a potential slide zone. And it just triggered all these things that ended up being, it could have been a very simple process, but you get bureaucracy and municipalities involved, and before you know it, it becomes this huge ordeal. And so that was a 5-year process, and I hated every moment of that once I realized that I was in that far, and really I was past point of no return, and I had to take it all the way to the end. Um, but you're stuck, and that's what it is. So I try and stay away from those types of projects. Now, the first new construction that we're doing within the city limits of Naples itself, which is a very narrow, small area compared to anything with a Naples address. That is you're running the gauntlet with them too, just in terms of like they like to make it challenging for new people to get through. So we had our own delays on this, but nothing compared to like the coastal commissioner if you're in a slide zone or something like that that would delay you years and years. So yeah, you got to be aware of those things for sure because they factor in huge in terms of people's desire to build stuff and ultimately what it's going to cost you in terms of continued debt service and then opportunity costs as well.
That makes sense. The other topic that came up this week that I think is relevant to talk about is for real estate operators, I think are notoriously bad at kind of outside of their business investment. They're really good at, buying rental property, even if they hate it. They're good at, deploying money in their business. But what has been your kind of stance and thesis, and I'll go into mine too, on how you invest your capital outside of deals in real estate? Like, are you a stocks guy? Are you putting in index funds? Are you putting it in crypto? Like, what do you do with your cash aside? I know you have quite a few vacation, luxury vacation rentals, and you're heavy in real estate. But what else do you do with your cash? And what's your kind of thesis on that? Everyone's got their own. It's still different.
Yeah, I mean, it's different for everybody. I would say the majority of, I would say capital net worth, whatever you want to call it, is in sitting in actual real estate right now. Some of it rental, some of it speculative. But for me personally, because of the game that I play, which is high end single family new construction building, I also have to keep a pretty heavy cash position at all times because it's a necessary component of playing in that game. And it took a while to be able to have that type of cash on hand to be able to play that game. And so there's a portion of, a good chunk of money that I always keep, I try and keep as cash on hand, which is in some form of, about a 4% ish, money market account, something like that. So it generates a yield. It's not just dead money, but it's there you just need it. You can have $200,000 to $300,000 Fridays where you're writing out, invoice payments, right? So it's just, it's necessary. Beyond that, I invest in a lot of, we'll call them speculative stocks, I guess. I don't think they're super speculative, but some of them, what's the line? I may have been early, but I wasn't wrong, necessarily. So, I do mess around with that quite a bit. I come into the office in the morning and I kind of look to see if I'm going to set up any trades or whatnot for the day. And, so that entertains me too. I don't spend a ton of time in it, but I also feel like the market's it was pretty topped out. So, I have some money that's in there, but I pulled, a fair bit off the table and I'm just kind of letting things ride out. Cause now if I had the insider trading info that, appears everybody had this week,
With policy,
I would have gone all in on it, but, I don't. So, I'm on the outside looking in on that one.
imagine that, these people that have, like the Ilhan Omar lady or whatever was like so anti-capitalism, but she's got a 40 million net worth or whatever. Like, you gotta be kidding me.
Yeah, there was I was, I don't know if you've followed the sites called Unusual Whales, so,
Oh yeah, they are so funny on
I
Twitter.
read their stuff a lot, but they sent out this, breakdown of how somebody made, like, $200 million on a bet that they put 5 minutes before Trump came out, on Monday with his announcement, for delaying, 'cause, they have a peace agreement that fuck, who knows, but it changed the market so much that, they made a couple $100 million, but they made that bet 5 minutes before he spoke. So, if I could have rode the coattails of that trade, that probably would have been a great thing. But
No
unfortunately,
better
I did
business
not.
model than insider trading.
Yeah.
How you get caught. But until then, it's a lot of fun. No, well, but
Yeah.
as we wrap up, I think on that topic, what I've started doing, obviously, kinda younger in my journey, what I've always tried to do is, which has helped me through, periods where business gets harder or you're trying to invest in the future more so than extract cash is, um, just build good liquidity outside of it. And I've always kept a, decent cash position outside of business just because, as we've rebuilt Easy Button, like I haven't taken a salary, we haven't, none of it, we haven't taken really meaningful money from it in a couple years. And, so having the ability to kind of decide what pace you grow at, I think is important. And for me, I've just, I'm married into a family that, my father-in-law was, ran one of the largest financial firms. And so I got really versed in, life insurance, what a lot of these guys do with that. Um, and so I've bought a lot of that and watching them as they get towards end of life, not have to worry about spending their money because they know when they die, there's a massive check coming to everyone in their family no matter what. Um, I've done a lot of that, probably bought in 4 or 5 million in whole life, and then it's about some term life just to make sure that which is expensive monthly carry. And I don't do it for the investment side. Like, I don't think it's the best investment vehicle, although there are some benefits to it. It's more just that like you can make mistakes and screw up and still, people are taken care of when it comes to that. So that's been my only thing that really changed in the past couple of years besides
What
just
about crypto? I mean, I got a little crypto account, but it's like lost about 80% of its value from when I
yeah.
originally opened it.
I got
But
lucky with crypto. I had a lot, like probably half my liquidity in it when I was like 21, 22. After after Kay and I got married, we bought our house. I sold like most of my Bitcoin to buy the house. And literally, and my business partner at the time, Mike, we both had probably 500,000, 600 grand in Bitcoin. And, I sold most of mine. I left like 200 grand in there, but I sold most of mine to buy our house, and then he kept it. And then 3 days later, it dropped from like 65 to 15. And he went from like 600 grand, 500 grand to like 150 or 200, then like panic sold. And I had gotten lucky because I'd pulled it out and stuck it in our house. But that was my last big kind of, parlay into crypto because I just don't understand it. And I also like, I don't know. I feel like when I was young, I was in such a hurry to like get as rich as possible super quick. And now I just don't really even think that way. I'm just like, how can I just slowly compound one foot in front of the other year after year? What you told me early on, you're like, the people that guarantee that they don't get wealthy are the ones that are trying to get rich quick all the time. And I've seen that play out for a lot of people.
That is true. My, Bitcoin, I bought it when it was, like, remember when it dipped to, like, 40 a while
Mhm.
ago?
Right.
I'm up 57% on my Bitcoin, so it's actually my, by far best, performer that's, with the exception of one other that's in the green, everything else is red. But I bought this other one a couple weeks ago. I was like, "Ah, this is interesting." It was a Western Asset Reserve, and, it went up, like, 900% in a week, and I was like, "Oh, I've seen this movie before," so dumped it. And now it's down, from when I originally bought it, 4%. So it's gone it's like almost 1,000% up and down, but that's crypto, right? So, like,
Remember when
that's
Elliot put like 2 grand in a GameStop and then bought like an $80,000 truck cash from that?
yeah, he bought some call options on that, and he just got lucky as hell. It exploded that day. Otherwise, they would have expired worthless, and he would have lost the money. But and to be fair, I actually own a lot of GameStop right now because I think it will, as it transitions into whatever it's going to turn into, will be much more valuable than it is today. But that's one of my, I might be early, but I don't think I'm wrong guesses. So
Well, cool. Well, guys, I wouldn't say take financial advice from us or anyone on the
no,
internet.
do whatever you want, but
I thought it I thought it was a good thing to note that, there's no magic tool, like, a lot of people like, I think there are the basics to do, like, you can max out yourself to, your 401k, you can max out, you can start using a self-directed IRA. There's a lot you can do to kinda still, even if you're self-employed, kind of build towards, on the financial health side, but we're not gonna say this podcast is about that. I just thought I get that question a lot, so I wanted to talk about it a little bit. Besides that, you guys, thanks for sticking around for another show. This one's a little longer, but I think it was very impactful. And we'll be back next week as always. We'll also have another slew of client case studies, active clients, 20, 30-minute episodes coming, talking about what they're doing to do deals right now across the country. So besides that, as you guys know, we only grow this through word of mouth. So we appreciate you guys telling your friends, coworkers, family about the show. Leave us a like, a review, and wherever you listen. And until next time, you're only one deal away.